And confirmed. Okay. Just to revert to indications of absence, Senator the Honorable Chad Blackman. Further announcements. There have been some improvements made to our elevator, and just confirming that one gets stuck. And that matter has been resolved, I'm advised. But just in case, on hold, and a couple of things will happen. One, elsewhere in the building, but more especially at the desk of security. Additionally, there will be an automated phone messaging system indicating there's a call from the elevator. There will also be a message to the phone of the marshal and the clerk. So rest assured that trapped in the elevator, which is fully available for use, and with those additional please.
Decision and to rescind the recommendation that we confirm the minutes of our meeting held on the 26th of June, and instead
advise the clerks that there's an error in the decision to confirm those minutes until that matter is rectified. To the notice in terms of the actual minutes. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The think the ayes have it. Those against, please say no. The think the ayes have it. Standing order 45-2. Therefore suspended for the remainder of today's sitting.
Introduction.
Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, I beg to move the first reading of the Marine Transport Emissions Control Bill 2024.
The question is that the Marine Transport Emissions Bill 2024 be read a second time. With all of the, sorry, read the first time. Yes. With all of the senators in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. The think the ayes have it. The bill is accordingly read a first time.
Public business, sir.
Public business is now the order of the day.
Order number 3, sir. In the name of the Honorable Leader of the Senate, to move the second reading of the Notaries Public Bill 2024.
Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The bill before the Honorable Senate is meant to simplify for the benefit of the public of Barbados the ease of notarization. As you will see in the bill, Mr. President, it seeks to expand the number of persons who are designated as notaries public and have the ability to provide notarization services. And so, Mr. President, historically, on the basis of what we have had all of this time under the existing Notaries Public Act of 2017, what we've always had, Mr. President, is the following regime where, as under the law as it currently stands, the following persons are provided under the legislation to notarize documents. They are the Solicitor General, the Deputy Solicitor General, the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Attorney General, a number of permanent secretaries, including the Permanent Secretary in the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Home Affairs, and International Business, a number of deputy permanent secretaries, the supervisor of insolvencies, the registrar of the Supreme Court, deputy registrar of the Supreme Court, registrar of companies, and the deputy registrar of companies. Several of those persons, including the registrars and the deputy registrars, and certainly my own permanent secretary, fall within my ministry. And the challenge, Mr. President, is that under the category that we just made mention of, aside from attorneys at law, you have a scenario where, Mr. President, it has been very difficult, and a lot of persons have expressed concerns about the ability, or rather the inability, to find notaries public to certify their documents. And so, Mr. President, the Law Reform Commission as it has continued to do its work, has considered many of the issues that have been raised by the public of Barbados. And I'm not going to go into an extensive presentation on this bill, Mr. President, but I am going to share what the Law Reform Commission, excuse me, has recommended. They themselves have recommended, Mr. President, and I'm reading as follows from the legislation itself, that attorneys of law at law of more than 10 years of practice and suitable members of the public be designated as persons who would be eligible to first undergo a period of training, a process of training, I should say, and then thereafter be allowed to function in the role of notaries public. And the bill simply does just that. It would allow, Mr. President, first, for those persons who fall within the categories that I have just mentioned, to be in a position to first undergo the training as I have mentioned. There would be a roll or a register of notaries, which would be maintained by the registrar. And then you would have a number of ex officio notaries public that will be maintained, and they fall within the categories that I have just mentioned, including the registrar, deputy of the land registry, and all assistant registrars of all registries which are established. The circumstances under which these appointees are going to be established, they will be required to pay an annual fee, which will then be determined, but if the renewal date is missed, there is the fee plus a penalty of 50% of the fee, which is payable. And these notaries will then be restored to the role which I referred to earlier. And the appointment of a notary public may be revoked or suspended by the president under the following circumstances, Mr. President. One, where they are convicted of an offense punishable by imprisonment, they are found guilty of any act which constitutes misconduct, whether in their capacity as a notary public or otherwise, where they allow their name to be used by another person to perform notarial acts, where he charges or accepts a fee for a notarial act in excess of the prescribed fees, where he has been adjudged bankrupt, where an application is made to the High Court the High Court has made an order appointing a receiver for the notary public, or he has failed to file a notice with the registrar where required to do so. And so, Mr. President, this is the regime that has been established, first to establish a register, first to be trained, first then to allow for persons to be removed from the notarial acts register. And then finally, Mr. President, it allows for the minister to make a series of recommendations called regulations under the legislation. And these cover the following areas, Mr. President. Fees which may be charged for the carrying out of any notarial act, the annual fees or the fees payable upon the application for appointment as a notary public, the conduct of notaries public, including the manner in which records are to be kept, the manner in which the registrar shall preserve or dispose of seals or certificates surrendered to him, the program of training, which I mentioned earlier, any handbook or directions applicable to notaries public, the accreditation of any person, agency, or educational institution for the delivery of the program of training, and the establishment of a body that will design and evaluate the training program and advise on the standards of conduct. Finally, Mr. President, the regulations can also include any other matters related to the discharge, it is a catch-all phrase, discharge or discharge of the duties or the functions of notaries public. This is, in summary, Mr. President, what is contained within the bill that is before this honorable chamber. It reflects an expansion in the number of persons serving as notaries public. It establishes a training regime that ensures that they're able to function at the highest level. It allows for them to be maintained in a standard of conduct, but also to have a register which manages them. But ultimately, Mr. President, this is very much a part of the ease of doing business in Barbados. As you know, there are any number of circumstances under which the services of a notary public is required in the country. And so the ability of the members of the public to be able to find persons to perform these services, permanent secretaries are often traveling, they're often in meetings, they're often unavailable. Oftentimes persons who are judicial officers are before the court, or they themselves are dealing with matters in their private practice. And it oftentimes becomes very difficult to identify in a very narrow scope the persons who may be available to provide the services of a notary public. And the expansion, therefore, of the number of categories of persons who can do this while still remaining within the code of conduct that is required for the service and still maintaining the level of training and oversight that is required, this really is a matter to facilitate the members of the public that require it, Mr. President. And so I don't wish to make a big to-do over it in terms of going into the legislation. I simply want to say this is another way in which this administration is attempting to make the services more accessible to the members of the public of Barbados. This is the bill before this honorable chamber, and I beg to move that it be read a second time.
Thank you, Senator Cummings. Senator Watson.
Mr. President, thank you for recognizing me. Mr. President, 3 days ago, 2 days, I asked formally to be advised what we would be debating today. I'm yet to receive a response. So, coming here today with several bills on an order paper, yet again, we have to guess specifically what will be debated today. That was my specific question, Mr. President. We have this bill, which has been on the order paper for over 100 days.
Mr. President, I rise on a point of order. The honourable senator is misleading the House. Mr. President, the notice for the sitting of the Senate went out with all of the items on the order paper some time ago. I believe that I saw an email that came in from the honourable senator asking about the specific items to be debated. The clerks of Parliament, as is their job, reached out to ask which of the several items on the order paper would be debated, and I personally provided in writing what they were to the clerks of Parliament, and they were shared with all honourable senators. And so, Mr. President, the honourable senator is misleading the chamber.
Mr. President, the honourable senator is misleading the chamber. I have not received any response whatsoever